At just 18 years old, Shadonovic demonstrates remarkable maturity in both his writing ability and his journey as an author. He began writing at the tender age of 6, and at 17 won first prize in the Fictionate Me contest in the non-adult category, where our co-host Heather served as both a judge and curator for the anthology Unmoored, Worlds of Pure Chaos. Since then, he has envisioned a world that could potentially span an impressive 54-book series. While his age might suggest youthful exuberance, our conversation with Shad on the show reveals a talent that is only beginning to flourish. Join us as we delve into the creative mind of the talented Canadian author Shadonovic. Grab your favorite brew, take a seat, and enjoy the insights from this young literary prodigy. This is the Brewing Fiction Podcast. And welcome to another episode of the Brewing Fiction Podcast. I'm Keith, she's Heather, and before we introduce today's guest, I wanted to thank our constant listeners for taking the time to listen to this podcast over the past few months. When we started this back in, back in April, I believe, Heather?
I think so.
We pondered releasing it monthly, just because we weren't sure how many guests we could secure each and every week. We were thinking maybe we should go monthly, and we quickly found out that the schedule filled up, and all of a sudden we're releasing weekly, and
we're booking into next year already.
And booking into 2025 already. So,
yeah.
It's been a very exciting and just a great ride thus far, and I think we've got a lot more to come. Yeah. And I hope listeners are getting something from the podcast. I'm going to tell you, I'm learning lots and lots from the interviews and using it in my journey.
Definitely.
So, that being said, today's episode is going to be the last for this summer. So we'll be back in September. Another busy lineup of writers, publishers, cover
September
designers.
1st.
Exactly.
Kicking that off with my friend and editor from Neon Sunrise.
There you go, editors. Can't forget editors.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
It will. So I'm just inviting everybody to check out brewingfictionpodcast.com to keep an eye on what's happening and what's upcoming. And on that note, I'm going to turn this over to Heather to introduce our guest for today.
Well, today we have another one of my favorite writers from Fictionate Me. He was our young author grand prize winner. At the time, he was 17 years old. He goes by the very cool pen name Shadonovic. And he is here with us from Canada. So welcome, Shad. We're so glad to have you here.
Go Canada.
Glad to be here, honestly. Coming here from Canada, I'm like, how the heck did I get in here? I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Shad.
Well, I am evidently a writer. I enjoy writing a lot, and it's not like a chore for me. I really enjoy plot design, writing, and creating stories, especially in like little forms like that, where I don't really need to worry about like a huge plot spanning multiple books.
Mm-hmm.
I can more condense it all. But then I don't always write. I have more life than with a pen and paper, and that is I really enjoy playing video games, playing sports, going outside, touching grass. I know that's such a novelty for a gamer. But yeah, and I really enjoy like doing a variety of things, which it comes with writing. I like writing a variety of things. And I really enjoy doing things like sports and even my job, like being a lifeguard, which is currently the job I have rather than being able to write, which is the dream, but not sustainable yet. I'm no Stephen King. So one day.
One day, that's right.
Well, the good thing is you're doing a job that you can enjoy already. I mean, lifeguarding that's got to be fun, right?
Oh yeah, it's very fun. Swim instructing is very fun as well. It allows me to come home every day feeling accomplished, which is something
great.
I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah, it's great to teach. I do miss teaching. I miss, just that feeling of imparting something to a kid,
Well, yeah, like seeing like the impact and knowing maybe one of these kids I teach will one day become a lifeguard just like myself or another instructor. And it's like that's an idea that I cherish and love.
Yeah, that's awesome. And who knows, maybe a kid that you instruct as a little kid when they're first learning those life-saving skills could go on to be an Olympic swimmer. And you'll be
Maybe
sitting
one
there one
day.
day saying, "Oh my God,
I taught him.
that's one of
I
my
taught him.
students."
Yeah, that must be great for teachers. I'm sure, Heather, you feel that way from students who have had success.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. And yeah, it is an amazing feeling. And I do miss that from teaching.
I'm sure
But
you do. Yeah.
but we do have like a hometown kid in the Olympics where I grew up.
Nice.
So he's in the diving, so we'll be rooting him on Tuesday.
That's
So that's pretty
awesome.
Fabulous.
cool.
That is
I didn't
cool.
teach him, but I could have at
You
his
still know him.
age group.
It's
It's
cool
like
just
a
to be,
cool.
like
I
you said,
mean,
you're, yeah, from
yeah,
hometown. That
yeah,
that is cool.
it is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
We all get excited about just our countrymen, but now you have a hometown boy, girl, hometown guy, you
Boy,
said, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's 20. He's in college, so a man actually, but
I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
very young to me still. But
Yeah. Exactly.
okay, so Shad, the next part is what we call Fast Five. And these, you just don't really think about it. You just give me the first answer that comes into your mind.
Okay. Impulsivity. Impulsivity, my
Like,
specialty.
yeah, all spontaneous type stuff. And here's one I love to ask people. When you're writing, do you edit as you go, or do you complete the whole thing and then go back and edit?
Answer to that would be yes, Heather.
Okay.
It depends entirely on the mood, I feel. Like sometimes I'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, Grammarly has pointed out that what I wrote is at the level of a fourth grader. And then other
Yeah.
times I finish the book, finish two more books, and then go back and rewrite the first one because I have no
Wow.
idea what I'm doing anymore.
Wow. So prolific. Okay, it's the youth just firing off
Right.
books like crazy.
I
Yeah.
call
Um,
it impulsivity.
if you had a fellowship or some like just money dumped in your lap and you could go on a writing retreat anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I do my damnedest to get like some sort of custom. I guess the best way to describe it would be lo-fi house, like a glass cabin in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And it's like the idea of being in this like secluded area and being like completely on my own in the middle of the woods. But basically, this idea of like being by a lakeside and like being able to write from a secluded location where it's close enough to the city that it doesn't take me 3 hours to get there, but
Right.
also the idea that nobody just stumbles in on my house and it's like this glass
Right.
cabin, the kind you see in like the lo-fi videos, like I said, where you can get a view of the lake, maybe like you can get a view of the stars and just the trees all around you. Because I found the
Hmm.
forest is really where I get the motivation to start writing. Like that's where I really
Awesome.
start
Yeah.
to see the words come alive.
Nice. That's really awesome. Yeah, I live
Cool.
out in the woods too, and it's very inspirational. Very inspirational. I grew up out, in the wilderness, and I think that has a huge impact on me too,
Absolutely.
as a writer, So,
Yeah.
your stories, are you more plot driven or are you more character driven?
Plot driven. I'm trying to become more character driven because I know
Yeah,
that a lot of like what makes a book successful is the idea that the people know the characters and are tying into the characters. And so
right.
I can make a plot in 5 seconds flat. Like it's one of those things that comes fairly naturally, I like to think. Not saying it's a good
Hmm.
plot, but I'm saying it's a plot.
Yeah, it's a plot.
Um,
Yeah.
but when it comes to the characters, I don't always know how to develop them. I'm not really sure like how to advance their plots individually. And
Right.
so that's one of the things I've had to do is with my first book, I'm now going back and rewriting the entire thing because I realized I didn't develop anybody.
Hmm.
They were pawns on the chessboard to advance my plot. And that was it.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I was kind of the opposite. I'm a little bit too character driven. So when I finished The Revenant Hunters, I had to go back. My thing was world building. I felt like that was my weakness. And so coming back into it, I've added new characters. I've really fleshed out, the girl's like hometown, her village a lot more. And it's added so much more to the narrative. So, but it's cool that you see that. and you kind of dive into where you want to expand your skills.
I think that is a skill. I'm a lot newer at writing than you guys. And if I were to be asked that question, I don't know that I can tell you I'm more driven by. I don't know if I'm a character driven writer or if I'm plot or.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you don't always need to know exactly like the answer to that question. I've noticed with a lot of like the writing questions, you don't need to know exactly the answer, but at least like to get a general idea of which one you like doing most. Because once you understand what you like doing most, that's where you can start to identify like, okay, if I love this so much, what are things I can do to make it better, more enjoyable? And in
Yeah.
that case, that's where the answers start to become a little more clear. Like they never
Nice
become
advice.
truly clear, at least not in my 12 years of writing. But they, at least, it's not looking at an opaque piece of wall, it's looking through a foggy piece of glass. And that's at least a step forward.
Nice.
Yeah. So, as a writer, do you find yourself being more of a pantser, or do you like to sit down and really work on a plot? Like, do you really, really plan before you start writing?
It depends. Um, when I do decide to go pantser, I will usually have already thought of the outline in my head. Like,
Yeah.
I remember one of my writing classes, they mentioned an author, and I probably should remember it, but I don't have a very good memory. But basically, like, he would go out to a walk in the forest, gather his thoughts, and by the time he sat down at his desk, he had the full story in mind.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I'd say
Wow.
that's similar to what I do, not to the same prolific extent, but something akin to that, in that I
Yeah.
will usually have the idea in my head. But then other times, if I have like a big project like Gratzenmorn, I need the outline because otherwise I don't know where I'm taking the story. And I
Right.
can make it up, but the way my mind works will not translate well to something that everybody can read and enjoy. I can see this went here, 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 and there, but that's not the easiest path to follow if I am not the butterfly flicking between all the flowers. So,
That's a good way to put it. And it's really like when I'm writing a short story, I can sit down and pants it. But if
Yeah.
it's going to be something longer, a novella length longer, I have to plan. I have to know where it ends up, or I won't even know where to start. I
I'm
might have a
similar to
strong
that.
start, but then 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh my God, where am I going to go with this story?
Yeah, I kind of have the starting line and the finishing line, and I don't do a lot of plotting in between. I just throw it
Kind of
all
wing
in a
it in the
mixing
middle.
bowl. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And everybody, I think, as you grow as a writer, your like planning or lack of changes.
yeah.
You
I would
know,
think, right? Yeah,
some people might plan to death, and then as they get better, they kind of loosen up. And then in my case, I was like a freewheeling pantser, and then now I'm, you know, I'm in the middle.
yeah,
I like to plan some and kind of let things just kind of come out organically.
I'd say it's similar to like how food or drink would go to room temperature. Like everybody, there is that general idea of where everybody should be if they want to be like going through it. And some people remain really hot, like they're in like a thermos, and then other people have really hot food and that goes like on a hot plate. But generally everybody peters out around the same area because there is a definite balance that, well, most of us normies that we require, like somewhere in
I
the
think
middle.
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I
And
agree.
so it's interesting seeing like the different perspectives and seeing like how people get about with what they're doing.
Everybody has their own process as a writer. And it's really interesting to see how different and how alike our processes can be. That's
Yeah,
that's why I love doing this. It's just so interesting to see everybody's different journey.
that's what I like to see as well. Some people start out, like you said, Heather. You start out just all over the place. My own words, not how you said it, but
Yeah.
and then others are like very tight plot driven right from the get go.
Yeah.
But it sounds like in our 16 or 17 episodes, everybody has changed a little from the start of their journey, right? So,
Yeah.
And I think that's good, seeing the
yeah,
change.
yeah, growing, right? Growing as writers.
Yeah. Definitely. We have to grow and adapt as we
Yeah,
change, and your skills grow as a writer, so you're bound to change, I think.
yeah,
You
I think
you
so.
should. I mean, we're always learning from each other, from the books that we read, from just talking to each other.
It's true.
Great
Yeah.
community to be in. So, all right, so let's get into our actual interview. So, Shad, you are so far our youngest guest on the show, which is really cool. Um, when we did the Unmoored contest at Fiction Ain't Me, you were only 17 at the time and you won the grand prize. We were very, very wowed by the maturity of your writing. If I would have just read that blind, and this wouldn't have been like, one of the submissions from our non adult category, I would have never have guessed you were under 18. So when
Thank
did
you.
you start writing? You're only 18 now. So when did you
Six.
start?
I
Wow.
started writing at 6. It was all like they had this elementary school like you could write a story and they'd turn it into a little like paper copy of that story,
Hmm.
and I read it now and I cry because it's horrible. But it's like that's where my writing started, and I had to start on the little stepping stone to build any sort of path. But like I started at 6 and I did casual writing, like just wrote whatever came to my head, wrote a ripoff of the Warriors series, wrote a ripoff of a movie I saw, like basically just did the rip on a bunch of stuff. But then I would look at, for example, when I was 12, that's when I really started getting to like, well, what do I like about writing? I really like making stories. So I started making a story, and especially around 8 years old, like backtracking a bit, that's when I started getting to like communities where there would be D&D style improv roleplay. Like you
Mm,
Hmm.
made up scenarios, and that helped me to get like really quick on my feet. Like I'd really learn really quickly how to do
Yeah.
this, how to do that, how to integrate my characters into a public setting. And then once I got to like 12 to 14, that was when I'm pretty sure most people will understand this. That's when the ego trip started coming out, where you'd want to be the best. And so it was
Yeah.
all about making the best character. I got rid of that real quick because holy smokes, it sucked. But then I was able to transition that into learning about balance, and that helped me learn how to balance the powerful characters in stories. Because obviously, if you have one character playing God, no fight is fun. And
mm,
so
Yeah.
I learned balance through that. And so really I started taking writing seriously at 14. Like that's when I really started to develop a love for it and started writing my first pieces. And
okay.
then at 17 I had the Hell of Ashvin, and that was a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun to read. It is such an amazing world you created in just a single short story. But
I'm
you also
flattered.
left it open so that you could keep pursuing that story later if you wanted to, which is really smart. I do that myself. And so you kind of can leave it open because you have the rights to that story always. And so you can always come back to it. And you also
Yep.
left it on the cliffhanger, and we totally wanted more of the story. So it definitely left us wanting more.
Yeah, is there more coming?
There is going to be, because one of the things is, if anybody has read both Hashvin and Gratzenworn, they'll notice that one name pops up in both, and that's Enocavian, and that's the same guy. The same guy in
Mm-hmm.
this medieval world is now fighting on Hashvin, a completely different planet.
Nice.
And so there is a bridge connecting those stories, and that bridge the sci-fi aspect of my book, medieval fantasy, but somehow sci-fi,
I
and that
love that.
I've tied that together. And later, if you guys want, I can mention that. But basically, like they are the same universe, they are the same world, and there is more to come because I'm planning a 3-book series on what happened. Like, why did the Chalkians, the antagonists of the story,
Hmm.
manage to slip by all of Hashvin's defenses, destroy their entire defensive fleet, which was a thing? They had a fleet of defensive warships, and they failed spectacularly.
Like
How did
everything
they
did.
wipe out the mages? How did they take on the best of the best Hashvin had to offer and murder them? Basically, how did they win so quickly?
Mm.
And the 3-book series will center around a main character who his story should be able to shine some light on how Hashvians got their butts so sorely handed to them on a silver
Mm.
plate.
And that's what makes the story so, it was so suspenseful because, how do you defeat this enemy that just seems completely unbeatable? So, and this goes right into the next question that I already had. Your story, The Hell of Hashvin, won the grand prize in our Unmoored contest, and it's also in our Unmoored Worlds of Pure Chaos anthology that we did. So if you want to check it out, you guys can pick that up off of our website. But tell us, Shad, what the Hell of Hashvin is actually about.
So Hashvin itself is, I'm going to offer a little bit of backstory here. Hashvin itself is a bit of a wasteland. It's the remnants of a planet destroyed by utter warfare, utter civil warfare, actually. And all that remained were those that could use technology and those that could use magic. And the lines between technology and magic were very blurred because these days, what we thought was magic is now just undiscovered science. And so, with that, they started to rebuild using their technology enhanced by magic. But the Hell of Hashvin shows how quickly everything came tumbling down. Basically, Hashvin was this prospering planet, and we follow the story of Gabriel, one of the mages of their academy, one of the last academies to exist because magic is deemed just a weaker technology. And suddenly the mages are the only ones left because every bit of technology has just broken down. All their defenses are gone. And so all that remains are these capable mages like Gabriel or a new survivor he meets who is a Stonelian, can control stone itself. Stone is her element. And basically Hashvin is a semi informal format. Like you get a journal entry from Gabriel, then you get a story, then you get a journal entry, then you get a story. And it's basically about him trying to figure out, okay, how can I fight back? Because I can't just sit in a bunker forever. They're gonna find me. And it's all about him trying to figure out, okay, how do I fight back? And he hides with his new companion. He tries to find the Likavin's palace, and the Likavin is like their guardian. He's not a leader. I want to point that out. He's not their leader. He's their guardian, and he's supposed to protect them, but nobody's seen him since the start of the battle. And his elite guard, nobody's seen them either. And so all they know is there's a piece in the center of the planet known as the Likavin's palace that can protect them, and the rest I'll let the readers read. But
Yeah.
basically, like that's the story. It's like this planet is completely getting overrun, and Gabriel is not going to be the one to save it. No, like I'm gonna preface that with that. He's not going to save it. He's not going to save the planet single-handedly. He's not that kind of mage, but he's going to try and find a solution.
This story to us felt like, even though it was a short story, and it already just felt like a very established world. Um, did you come up with the story idea for Hell of Passion when you saw the prompt for the contest, or was this a story that had already been sort of floating around in your mind already that you sort of pulled out and said, I can do this as an entry?
Pulled it clean out of left field. I just reached out,
Wow.
grabbed it, threw it in a book, and then later on went, I wonder if I could combine the two worlds, the medieval Gratzenmorn and the futuristic sci-fi Hashvin. And so I worked towards that, but I dreamt it up off the prompt, like the idea of wizards fighting aliens. And I'm like, that would be fun. Let's figure out
Yeah.
a way.
And that was a really cool like blend you had there. That was one of the great things about that contest. We just got so many really cool it had to be two contrasting things in the story. It had to be science fiction. It had to be fantasy too. And the way people brought it together was really awesome. And we really, really loved the magic system that you have in Hell of Hashvin. So can you tell us a little bit about your magic system?
So again, that magic system is pulled clean out of Gratzenmorn. Like that's the same magic system I use over there. And like basically the thing is there are different magic systems in that world as well because I consider like the different kingdoms to have different ways of approaching magic. And so in Hashvin, the magic system, there were three of them presented. The Shadic magic system in the Stonelian, who the actual name for that would be Pentalion, and that means like control apprentice of stone. And it's basically like the idea that you control elements to their fullest extent, but only that element. So a
Right.
Pentalion cannot control steel. It cannot control fire. Only stone. And so
Okay.
that's what she was able to use. Gabriel represents the Gratzenmornian style of magic, which is something more akin to say just as an example, Skyrim's magic, where it's destruction, conjuration, alteration, restoration, like all these different schools of magic, whereas Shadic magic is largely element based. And then you have something like the Likaven, who is a mix of the different kinds of magics because he's not fully Shadic, he's not fully Gratzenmonian, so he uses a combined style of all the magics of his blood. And so it's like this magic system is a tiny glimpse into what the bigger scale of magic is in the worlds I make. And I'm actually writing that right now in book 3. Like I'm actually writing the magic system in action. But that's a short view into what the magic system is.
Wow.
Yeah, I love elemental magic. And so I really enjoyed the Stonelian's power and how her powers they really complemented Gabriel's. The two, even though they have two completely different like ways of doing magic, and she ended up being a powerful force in that story. And I would love to see more of her maybe at another point. She was great, and I love that magic system. I just love magic systems anyway.
So do
So
I. I have a full Google Doc of like all the Shadic magics and like how they work, and I have that locked and loaded because I love the idea of making magic.
Can you say that maybe that D&D helped in developing that
Honestly,
in your
it did
style? Yeah.
not. In fact, I'd actually say it screwed me over. Because
Oh,
all
do
I could
tell.
think of was creating the most impossibly powerful magic that no DM could crash. Like I said, I was in that ego phase. So
Okay.
you just think of like the most powerful magic, and that takes the fun right out of it. Like there's no passion anymore. It's just,
yeah,
I want to win.
yeah,
But
Right.
once I stepped away from that and actually looked at like my books rather than a public setting, I realized like, no, I should not be thinking of bone manipulation. I should not be thinking of manipulation of oxygen or like I cry thinking of this. People still use it. Void or shadow magic. Like even the name makes me want to drive my head through a wall. But basically, like I went from this arrogance of I want to be the best to I could actually make something, and that's where I
Yeah.
found more fun. So D&D kind of screwed me over, but then once I stepped away from it, it's like okay, now I'm good.
What made you realize that what you didn't want, though? So I guess it helped in a way. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
yeah. Because even yeah, everybody has to have a weakness. The villain has to have a weakness. The strongest magic has to have some sort of weakness in there somewhere. Or like you said, it's no fun. There's no conflict.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, got to have that conflict. So you're already, you're a young writer, but you have been writing for many years already. But you already have a really incredible grasp on world building. Um, when I read Hashbin, and it's been a while since I read it, but I see it all in my mind still so clearly. It's just this crumbling dystopia around you, and there's so much fear that just permeates everything. Um, is world building something you've perfected over the years? Do you feel like it comes more naturally in your writing?
Well, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate positive comments. When it comes to world building, I'd say my world building has not changed since I was 6. Like it, interestingly enough, I don't think my idea of how I make worlds changed. It's more how do I write them? How do I actually put them into paper that's changed?
Hmm.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
thought process is still the exact same. And I can say that for a lot of things. Like my thought process has not changed, not because it's not perfect, but because I'm stubborn as a mule. But the thing is, I really enjoy the world building, always have, and so that's not really going to change anytime soon. And it's something that I'd like to say comes fairly naturally because one of my main positions in terms of online presence with my work is as a plot designer for 2 animation studios. But when it comes to just the idea of bringing the world to life, that's where I'd say I've changed. Like I go into more depth or I leave
Mhm.
things a little loose. It's largely like depending on what part of world building we're talking about.
Yeah.
Conceptualizing, it's the exact same, and it probably will stay the same. Putting it into practice is what changed.
Right. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Exactly. So tell us about the animation studios. Like you do plot animation. What did you call it again?
Plot
Plot design.
design. Yeah.
Plot design. Tell us about that.
Well, okay, so the thing is, I grew up watching a lot of Minecraft animations, which I'm pretty sure younger folks of our audience, or even people my age, will be like, "Yeah, I know those." And I always dreamed of like being on one of their teams. And at one point, I had watched a gentleman by the name of Rainimator, and I saw his works, and like, what if I put that into a written format? And
Hmm.
so I actually wrote out the sequence along with a little bit of extra backstory on his first video, "The Struggle is Real." And I sent it to him, and I'm like, "Yeah, what do you think of this?" And he's like, "You look like you could be a good writer on my team." And so he invited me to his server. And the thing is, he had such a big writing team at that point. Like, he had too many writers, and too many cooks spoiled
Hmm.
the broth. But then he turned to his animators, Fred and Nico, and said, "Hey, you guys just started a new channel. What do you think of this?" And he presented me, and sooner rather than later, I became their lead writer. And so I
Wow.
write the plot of their story, and I've been writing like the entire sequence of what happens in their animation story, and it's just about putting it into animated format that is now the waiting point. But that's largely what I do. Like, and I made a guest appearance on Ranimator's channel once for one of his pilot episodes, and I went in and was helping to rewrite the script to make it what I thought was a little more clear and a little more interesting. Some of the edits got changed because they thought the English was a little too extravagant slash like difficult for their younger audience.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I don't know their audience very well, so I can't really say. But
Okay.
I was happy to see that some of my favorite lines I had written in there got into the animation. Like
Oh,
some,
that's
and
cool.
the voice actors for those lines, I cannot describe to you how amazing it was to see those lines come to life
Oh, I can
so
imagine that
vividly.
you wrote.
Right.
Yeah. You'll
Yeah. I
have
mean,
to,
it's
yeah, we'll have to put that up on the website.
yeah, yeah. When I was doing a little bit of research, I noticed I checked out a couple of the videos, Rainimator, just because I didn't understand how you were linked to it, and now your description just opened my eyes to exactly how you're involved. But you write a story and people read it. It's amazing to think that somebody likes what you're writing. But now
Yeah,
it's almost like a movie, right? I mean, it's animation. It's like
it's
now
basically
your
a
words are in a
movie.
movie. Yeah, your
Hmm.
words are in a movie. Like, holy cow, that's pretty
Well,
exciting.
that's the thing, but as well, like with the movie, just like a little bit of a tangent is, it's only as good as the voice actors make it. And Michael
Yes.
Zekas and Lizzie
True.
Same
Hoff
with games.
absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
That's
Like, they
awesome.
did so well.
Wow.
Like, Lizzie Hoff, obviously, I saw that one coming a mile away. She's been a voice actor forever. But Michael
Yeah.
Zekas, I haven't seen him before. I probably butchered the name, and he knocked it out of the park. Like, one of my favorite lines I've ever written, and he made it even better than I thought it would be.
Wow. That's
Wouldn't
so
those
cool.
be those? They would be a couple of great guests to talk about how they
Honestly,
convert writer stories into like become
Bringing
those
them to
characters.
life.
Wouldn't that be
Yeah,
awesome
that
I
episode
would be
think
for?
that would be
awesome.
excellent because it also like because they themselves have to know plot because voice
Hmm.
actors, the experienced ones, will change what is written because
Yeah.
they know like what audiences like to hear or know how they can portray it better. And I think a voice actor on here would be spectacular, like
Mm.
Keston Howard, Lizzie Hoff, Michael Zekas, any of the other voice actors that you see on like most scenes. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of them, and I'm pretty sure they could have some incredible insights.
I would think that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
There's our open invite.
Yeah,
I
you're the
wish I knew
VA.
them well enough. I've seen Keston Howard
Yeah,
on a call once, and that's it.
Yeah. Nope. That's fair. We'll have to do a little bit
that's
more digging into that. I think that is so cool.
that is really cool. It's a publication out of London, and they pick stories once a month to perform. So you submit your stories, and they have to be pretty short. And then they get these really cool actors to perform your stories if you're
Okay.
chosen.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of that. You have these actors, whether they're voice actors, whether they're on stage, bringing your stories to life. That is like level.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I definitely want to submit to Liars League to see if I can have one of my stories brought to life like
Oh,
that.
that would
That would
be.
be so awesome.
That's a dream.
Well, you're already halfway there, Shad. Look at you. You
Yeah,
are.
you are.
You're writing for movies already. Animation, you are.
What I'm seeing a lot lately since I've been submitting stories to different publications is instead of just magazines now, a lot of podcasts are now having open subcalls for authors to send in their stories so they can be performed
Mm,
by their voice actors or their stage actors or whatever. And it seems to be there's a shift now into in storytelling. It's not
yeah.
just visual anymore. It's audio. There are a lot of new apps now that bring together animation and stories as well. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a storyteller.
It is,
I
really.
agree. There are some things that are scary about it as well. Obviously, with
Yeah, for
we keep talking
sure.
about AI, right? But
Everything's oversaturated and all that,
yeah.
but
But that being
it's
said,
still fun.
yeah, as things develop, I think it's just different avenue that we can use, right?
Well, it's a limitless venue of opportunity. That's the thing.
For
Like,
sure.
any new development is also a new tool for us to use. So if we consider AI our greatest threat, we're going to sit down, cry, and never touch the pen again. But if we
True.
consider it a valuable tool to like give us beta writer feedback, or like to give us feedback on words, or it's like I'm really
Hmm.
stuck on this part, what's the potential avenues to go by, and then tweak them as they come. AI could be one of our greatest assets, not to write
Yeah,
our stories, but to help us
exactly. To be an
conceptualize.
assistant.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And just like anything else, I mean, imagine how painters felt when the camera was developed, or
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been that way.
Yep.
Yeah. And last episode, when I spoke with Fred, I asked him how he felt about AI, but also just the transition because he did his painting for some of his early works. It was physical paintings, right? And then it changed to digital. So we
Hmm.
talked a little bit about that. And it's not any different than AI helping writers and artists along going forward. You have to use the tools that present themselves, I think.
Yeah, and not to do the work for you. Like
Exactly.
Shad said, you don't want it to write the story for you. Why am I a writer if I'm going to get a machine to do it? No. But,
Exactly.
people are like, I've come up with really great outlines for my book, or, outline a story, you know,
Yeah.
nudge you along when you have writer's block. I mean, it all depends on how you use the technology,
Yeah,
not
I
to
agree.
exploit it.
Utilize it.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah,
developments that'll have to happen on licensing and that kind of thing. We spoke about that in a previous episode, but it'll settle. It's no different, and I've used this analogy before when music went to MP3s and probably too young for you to remember, Shad, but Napster came out and
yeah,
everybody was stealing and downloading music.
yeah,
It was inevitably created what we have now with Spotify and Apple Music, but
yeah,
right, so the artists were all up in arms, and it's not, maybe AI is a little more intrusive into everything, whereas
yeah.
MP3s was just the music industry, but it settled into just a different way of doing business, and I think AI will as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just needs to be regulated, just like the way streaming music. I mean, we didn't call it that back then, but
Yeah. Right.
everything
Exactly.
has to be regulated so that the artist can get their fair share. It's only
Absolutely.
fair.
Yeah.
Just like we don't want our words ripped off and used to train AI without our knowledge any more than artists want their paintings or their drawings ripped off, you
Right.
know, to train
Right.
AI. So, you
Exactly.
know,
And just a
you
few
just have
bucks,
to,
like, here, have a few bucks for it. That doesn't cut it. Like,
yeah.
for people who just read them, they're just words. For us, that was
Hmm. It's so much
effort,
work.
time, blood, and tears.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's more to it than just the 20 words you ripped from my novel. That
Yeah.
was a lot of thought and editing. That was the
Hmm.
result of 12 months of work. Like,
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
refined those over 4 edits, and you just yoinked them.
Just took it. Yeah.
Like, and that's the
True.
thing. The licensing covers need to be a bit more set in stone, although it is like
Hmm.
absolutely a precarious situation where it could fall either way.
Yeah.
So I just wait with bated breath.
yeah, it's a changing landscape, and it's going to be interesting to see where it all kind of ends up.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
So speaking of landscapes, we're shifting from Hell of Hashvin to Gratz and Moore.
That's a medieval fantasy book that I have been working on for a very long time. Like the beginnings of it were back when I was making these powerhouse characters for D&D. That's where the concept started. And then over D&D campaigns or even just like the improv style role plays I would end up writing in, it's like the story started to come together and the characters started to develop. And now it's honestly my favorite thing I've ever done. And the first book of Gratzenmorn is now currently on its third revision. I'm doing the third revision right now. And the thing is, it's about this young woman named Lunar who was third in line to the throne um, at her family. And normally in real life, the third in line to the throne would be in the clergy or the church because you got the heir, the spare, and then the third kid nobody cares about. Um,
The air to
and
spare.
the thing is, there's no church in the book I have. Their religious system is very much muted. Like it's not really that big of a deal because there's nothing the supernatural can do that nobody in the kingdom can't. So they've largely done away with that kind of thought. But also, this isn't humans. Like this is a little bit of a spoiler. They're the precursors of this race. Unarvians are humans. Humans were the precursors to this race, and they're also tied to
Okay.
Hashvin and
Hmm.
this new planet. But basically, Gratzenmorn surrounds Lunar as she was not aware that the assassins sent at her cabin were from her own family. Her
Hmm.
father, after her departure, tried to eliminate her, and she's not sure why. And that actually won't become apparent until book 6.
Oh,
What
Wow.
I'm
wow.
gunning for is people believe that that is because he wants to save his own hide from his daughter leaving him. That was not the case. It's a spoiler, but it's not going to show up for a while. But nonetheless, she needs to do something about it. And the way I describe it is when tragedy strikes, she's forced to play her hand. And she's forced to lead a rebellion to get rid of this group,
Cool.
as she also has seen the damage her father's rule had done, not only to her family's reputation, because the Evening Stars were once legendary and now they are considered a absolute failure of a monarch family, but
Hmm.
also to the kingdom. And she's seen like the damage done, how many rogues and bandits roam the streets without any consequence, how knights exert their power. So she's on to lead a rebellion and to overhaul her what she sees as a corrupt family. And then book 2 will be, well, book 1 was her attack on an enemy, and book 2 is her defense against an enemy.
Wow. So you've already got 6 outlined. How many total do you think will be in the series?
18.
18.
18. You have an idea for 18
Wow.
already?
6 in the first series, 6 in the second series, 6 in the third, and not to mention all the side stories for all the characters. Like that
Wow.
will number into 54 or something.
Oh my God. That is amazing. So it sounds like you have years.
How'd you have time to sit and talk with us?
I
Uh,
know.
I don't know. Honestly, most of the conceptualization goes on in here. I don't
Fair.
have it written down. It's just
Wow.
it's in my
No,
head.
it's gonna be, yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. But
So
wow, that
creative.
that just sounds
I always have time to bloat my ego with people telling me I'm important.
dang it, right? We need more of that in the book world anyway, especially
Wow.
in the indie book world. We need that. We need people to tell us that. So good
Totally.
thing. Yeah. Wow. So that's so many. That's like huge. I mean, you can see that becoming like movies, a series like on Netflix or something, like a very
I can
long
hope.
running series or Amazon or something.
I can
That would be
hope.
amazing. So, are you planning on self publishing or do you think you'll query and try to have this published traditionally?
Depends. Because one of the things with, like, I'm in university right now and we have co ops. And one of the things I'm going to try to do is get a co op with a publishing agency so I can figure out, like,
Cool.
how it works, like, how they go about their business. because I can't imagine it's an industry secret, but it's also not something that they just throw out there on the internet. But like, I'm torn because a big publisher will mean that I don't have as much creative freedom. Like,
Right.
that's something that I can't imagine is going to be offered to me. But in return, they're covering the major expenses that I have to deal with, those being like marketing and editing. Because right now, the problem with my book is how much it'll cost to edit. If I go with the low rate, like this, I think this is a considerably low rate from what I've seen online, 8 cents a word. I'm looking at $8,000
Oh my
Right.
God.
Right.
to just
Just to
edit
have
my
it
first book. Not
right. That's
publishing, not
insane.
marketing, just the editing, because it's 120,000 words, and they offer, even if they offer like a bulk word discount, doesn't matter. I'm screwed. Like,
That is, yeah, that's very
and
expensive.
so when I look at that, it's like, okay, that's a problem. And then what's the other avenue? Well, find somebody that can edit, that needs a writer, and I can exchange a favor with them. But even then, how do I publish it? How do I market it? How do I deal with the copyright? The thing with the big publishers is they have teams of lawyers that, even if that's not directly dedicated to defending their authors, inevitably that's what will happen. Their author gets their work ripped, the publisher goes after them.
Yeah.
And it's like, hold on, that's our stuff. That's this writer's stuff. You don't have that as an individual publisher. You
No.
have your single lawyer working in a bedroom in the middle of the night trying to figure out how to write a cease and desist letter that doesn't look like a death threat. So it's like, I'm still debating like what route I want to go. But
Yeah.
honestly, I can't imagine myself not without external help self-publishing or publishing anything until I'm well into my 20s.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine that's happening soon.
Yeah, money is an issue with self-publishing. Um, I know a lot of authors will do like Kickstarters to get funding, trade services like you mentioned, with somebody who could edit, because that your editing and your like book cover design, that's going to be your like huge expenses right
Exactly.
there, especially the editing. And like, $8,000, like you said, that's a low end, you know,
Yeah.
for a book that big.
Well, and that's a
So,
Yeah.
throw of the dice too, because like, I still need to go through it after the editor is done with it and make sure they didn't butcher my
hmm
child. Um,
yeah,
but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't just go here. I trust you. And I don't have that in me.
yeah, yeah. It's like you
Yeah.
also have to sort of audition editors, let them do a sample just to make sure you like what they're doing for your
Exactly.
book, because ultimately they're working for you, the writer. So you could always get some samples edited just to see.
That's interesting too. You know what? I think you made a very good point there, Heather, which maybe a lot of authors may or may not think. They work for you. Like for me, I'm thinking about, oh, I'm going to pitch to an editor and a publisher, and oh, please take me as if I'm working for them. But in actual fact, they are supposed to be working for us, right? And representing
Yeah,
us.
Well, and I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm literally like, I haven't gotten into the mindset of I am the employer. I am the
Yeah.
person whose word matters.
hmm
It's help me.
Hell, yeah. Please
yeah,
read my story.
please.
And
Interesting.
it's not something I think I can change very easily, because the only way I can imagine myself changing that perspective is once I have an established foothold. Problem is, what do I need to have an
Exactly.
established foothold?
I wonder if there's a point in a writer's career where they would get that confidence. Book two, book three, book four, right? I mean, you
Well,
have
yeah.
to.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is crazy. And
Hmm.
it is bad that it's so hard to decide, because I have problems with being traditionally published because they will have exclusive rights to my book.
Right.
I've done that. I've been down that road, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So it's not all it's cracked up to be, but I think everybody has to look into what's best for them.
I was going to say your personal scenarios where it falls, but
Yeah,
54
and
books, somebody would want to back that. I would think.
I would
Maybe I'll get
think
a
that,
sponsor.
Yeah. Right.
yeah, you get a start a Patreon and get some patrons going.
That would be fun if I had any sort
Wouldn't
of
that
an
be amazing?
audience.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So, what is coming up next for you, Shad? What's What's your next big step in your publishing journey?
Probably, like, I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure I'm going to be publishing anytime soon because it's a lot. My main goal is to get the books written,
Hmm.
and to enjoy the process because with each book, my writing only gets better.
Right.
And so my goal right now is to write those 54 books and to write out like a series because even if I don't enjoy them, I could take the route of John Flanagan and just read them to my kid. Like if I ever have a kid, I can always read them to him or
Hmm.
her. Like
Right.
it's one of those things where there's a lot of possibilities.
Well, there's huge possibilities, and I think a story as huge as yours could do a huge run on Royal Road. Publish there, get your feedback as you're going, build your audience, and then by the time you're ready to publish book one, you have a huge audience that will help with a Kickstarter to help you get the funding you need to actually publish your book yourself.
Yeah,
That's that's one route, and a lot of authors are starting to do that,
That's a
which is a
great,
really good
yeah,
idea.
great idea. Yeah. Are you familiar with that, Chad?
no, I'm not
No.
Royal
actually. Like,
Road.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll have to.
Heather
Yeah,
will.
we'll talk.
Yeah,
I'll email you
absolutely.
after.
please
Royal
do.
Road would be perfect, I think, for this kind of stuff you write, and because you have something that could literally go on for years. I mean, there are books on there that have thousands of chapters.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and they have very loyal fans. And I think you're young, and the type of story you have, you could definitely build a really great audience on there.
I might actually have to try that.
You should.
There's such longevity in your idea already in your mind,
Oh,
which is all you
yeah.
need, right? Like you just every week or every month. I'm not familiar with it, but Heather, you would know more. Like you could publish once, whatever timeline you feel is good for your writing. You could publish on there until you feel
For years.
either
Yeah.
financially ready or just
Uh-huh.
confidently ready to publish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, do you have anything from like the Hell of Hashbin or anything you've written that you would like to read to us today?
So I'm just gonna point out one part of book two of Gratzenmorn, and then I'll do the Hashvin excerpt if that's all right.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But basically, this is like Shadonovic. One of the things I get this question all the time. Your name is Shadonovic. You put yourself in the book? No. Shadonovic is my character. I named myself after him because I liked the name.
Yeah.
He's like Shadonovic Turkblad from Gratzenmorn is a totally different dude. Um,
Yeah.
but basically, he wears armor that everybody has agreed is heavy, just as a little backstory. And he was fighting somebody and they crushed his vambrace. Now, one of the things is his armor is one continuous suit. Like it's like a full, it hugs his body
Mhm.
because the thing with this metal is it's nearly impossible to pierce, but it is incredibly flexible underneath the right amount of pressure. And it's extremely heavy. And so, right here, he is talking to the mage who is having to deal with the mess that is his wrist beneath the vambrace. And so here we go. By the lacking grace of Conda, what in his name have you done? He demanded, his gloved hands already grazing against the surface of his horrid wounds. Did you not try to repair this yourself? I do damage. I don't repair it, Shadonovic replied, tossing his vambrace to the side. What Enoch expected to be a light clack turned to a shattering thud as the piece hit the ground, and his gaze was one of many that turned to see the cracks spiderwebbing in the stone from the impact. It had formed a divot, laid in it, and sat motionless, though Enoch stared up only to find the nonchalant expression of the young man. My arm, please, he murmured, gesturing to the mangled limb.
Nice and gross too, mangled.
Yep. Well, I mean, he did have a sentient suit of armor crushing his wrist.
That's a cool idea. Sentient suit of armor. That's
And
amazing.
here's something. Here's my favorite thing from Hashfin. Like this one, I wish I could have written it better because I can make it so much more epic than what I've written. But just so the readers will know what to expect. Um, the sky broke, clouds parted. The air fell still before a shattering explosion shook the world. A mighty streak of energy crashed before the last crowd of Hashfin. The survivors were hardly able to hear the shrieks of pain that came from the Chalkians through the blast. Gabriel was one of the first to open his eyes, and he gasped in shock when he saw it. Flowing back robes, a cape of dark Satan, white gloves curled into tight fists. The Likavin had arrived. Enochavian had come. they were saved.
Or were they? Oh, that's such a good story. So if you listeners out there want to read The Hell of Hashman, it is an amazing story. Um, you can check that out on our website. We do have a link to the Unmoored anthology. It's a wonderful, wonderful collection, and I might be a little biased since I helped curate that collection. Um,
Well, let me say that it is a wonderful collection. My wife, who is not into that genre, is currently enjoying the book.
oh, awesome.
So it is good, Heather.
Good, great. Just we have just such an amazing collection of stories and authors, and I'm so glad we're getting trying to get everyone from the book on at some point.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
right.
yeah, that's
Mm.
so cool, and to meet everybody, it's just been really great. Shad, beyond your book, gosh, well, your 54 books that you're writing.
Right. Yeah.
Um, do you think you'll get back to the Hell of Hashvin from the standpoint of like Gabriel, like from his, do you think you'll write anything from his point of view again, or a book just of that story, like expand that at all?
Gabriel, no. I do not see me continuing his story anytime soon, but I will be continuing the Hell of Ashvin story plot, um, because, like I said, I have a 3 book series planned for what happened there. And book 3 of that series and the 18th book of the Gratz and Mornian series will officially tie together the 2 worlds, and show what actually is the reason that Hashvin was under the protection of one of Gratz and Morn's mages when it's like Hashvin's using modern technology, sci-fi, futuristic,
Hmm.
and Gratz and Morn's still using swords and armor.
Hmm.
Right. That's such an interesting juxtaposition too. So we're really looking forward to seeing what's coming next for you. Being so young, you just have like the world at your feet, basically. The world is your oyster, so to speak. Um, so good luck to you on everything you're doing. You have such a huge world that you're creating, and I'm really excited to see where it is all going to go for you. So thanks for so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're very, very busy with everything you do. So
Yeah.
thanks for being on our little podcast. We're very happy to have you on. It
Hmm.
was great to meet you finally, like
Very nice to meet
officially.
you.
Never too busy for something like this. This was awesome. I had a
Well,
lot of
especially
fun.
that you
Awesome.
guys have worked together before, maybe not hand in hand, but I mean, you know each other, so that it's got to be very,
Yeah, we've
very
like
cool for you,
messaged
Heather.
each other for like 2 years now, I think, and
Yep.
just
Constant
watching.
communication. Just like, and
Yeah,
if I'm like having trouble with writing or something, I'll be like, Heather,
yeah, it's like help
help me!
me.
That's awesome, guys.
I'm screwed.
You are never screwed. Not with all those ideas, gosh, and that talent. You just have so much talent too, and it's so
Thank you.
exciting to see such young talent um, coming out into the world. So, hopefully we can have on more young authors like yourself too. We can
Yeah.
I
follow
hope
your
so. I mean,
journeys.
I read through most of the submissions, and I'm looking at some of the youth like entries. I'm like, holy smokes! Like,
We have
one of the guys was like what, 1 or 2 years
10.
younger than I was.
One was 10. He's 10
He
years
was
old.
6 or
10,
seven
and he
years
got
younger than
published.
me, and he's
Yep.
got that kind of talent, and I'm like, holy
It's
smokes!
incredible. Yeah, it's so
It's just one of those
incredible.
things where I hope that talent doesn't die out because of a bad teacher or because of a lack of support. It's like one of those things where if I see somebody writing, I try to support them as best I can because for all I
Exactly.
know, my word could make or break their entire career. And I could
Exactly.
either encourage one of the, like, this is far fetched, but like I could either encourage one of the greatest authors we'll ever see,
Hmm.
or I could have shut down such amazing potential
Yeah.
because as people we know we shouldn't take the words of strangers to heart, but at the same time we do.
So, Shad, where's your support beside reaching out to Heather? Like, do you have a good support system in your mind to help
Um
you succeed?
yes, I
Yeah.
do. I have a number of friends and communities that I flock around, and relax in. If no one else, my dad's always there to listen to my rambling.
Well, that's
Okay.
good.
That is good.
And it's like I do have friends that enjoy reading my content, and I do have people that enjoy giving me feedback, and that's something I quite love. So I do
Awesome.
have this like kind of support system, but I don't want to collapse on them. Like
Right.
it's my general life philosophy. Just like it's great to lean on people as long as they're able to. But if you collapse on them, you lose any sense of yourself being able to take control of events.
Yeah.
And so it's important to find that kind of balance.
Nice. Well, maybe Royal Road will get you a little
I'm gonna have to try it out.
outlet. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I think you did great on there.
There you go. Well, I want to thank you two for your time today. Shad, nice meeting you. Heather, as always, a pleasure to have you spend some time with us. And I guess we'll call this a summer, and we will be back in September.
Yes, we have a lot coming.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. Don't forget to swing by the podcast homepage, brewingfictionpodcast.com, for links to our awesome guest and to check out what's brewing next. And make sure to hit that subscribe button on your podcast player so you'll know when the next episode drops. We'll catch you later. Cheers.